Hi everyone, my name's Carl Gombrich. I am starting up a new university called the London Interdisciplinary School. I was a professor of interdisciplinary education at UCL before that, where I designed and led the undergraduate arts and sciences degree. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak today on this fascinating topic of the future of AG. Of course, it's an enormous topic. It's kind of my life, so I've got to try and narrow it down massively to deliver a few provocations in 5 to 10 minutes, which I hope then we can discuss at the main event. I'm not going to give any PowerPoints actually or slides. I thought I'd just talk straight to camera, if that's okay, for a short video. And I'm just going to talk about three things. I've got some notes here on the side I'm just going to look at occasionally. The three things are porosity, service, and interdisciplinarity. And I'm going to weave in some ideas among those three things as we go along. So what do I mean by porosity? I mean a university that looks outwards for things that motivate and drive its curriculum, and also so takes in things from the outside, if you like, to drive the learning, and also goes out into the community to all sorts of organizations, to for-profit organizations, to charities, to organizations, in order to learn. And so at LIS, the university I'm setting up, we are trying to do this really full on. So we're taking our real world problems from what we've discovered in discussions with outside organizations are of deep interest to them. So that could be the ethical nature of supply chains, the mental health of employees, social problems like knife crime or to do with education. And we're building a curriculum entirely around that. So we're building tools and methods and knowledge bases which we think will help students approach those real problems, but it is the real problems, the real world problems, which drive that curriculum. Now it's interesting, I saw on some of the emails you sent me, the organizers sent me, about kind of global challenges, and of course I'm sympathetic to that as someone who thinks that we are all on one planet, but this kind of inviting the outside in will, I think, encourage more locality in some ways, in the sense that organizations will be people which will be around us in our communities. So only those really that have direct contact, I think, with the global world will, in a sense, go automatically global. Though, of course, many industries immediately, for example, on the ethical nature of supply chains, are implicated or imbricated in global issues. But I'm somewhat skeptical, I have to say, of universities only focusing on things like the development goals, the SDG goals, because they can be a little bit quango-y, a little bit NGO-y. So that's a provocation I'd like to make. Think about what you're doing locally to make life better for people that live and work around you, rather than having some long, wider vision of going out to help the global world. So that's a challenge to universities, this porosity, because universities like to guard their expertise very closely. And this is a challenge for the auditors, the quality people in the university sector. And there's good reason for this and there's bad reasons for this. So there's good reason because universities are very high caliber in the UK. Our quality control, I would say, is second to none globally, and it's important to guard that. But if it's really about sort of protecting your knowledge and not being open to outside expertise, really, people who really know what they're talking about and could come in and teach fantastic things or deliver real provocations, indeed, within the university, then I think the university sector and the auditors need to be much more open and much more liberal about opening up to outside expertise as part of teaching and learning on, and assessment, indeed, that's a big one, on the curriculum. So that's porosity, inside out, outside in. Service is related, but it's about having a mentality that your university is at service, quite immediate service to the community in which you find yourself. And I'm quite excited to make connections between what organizations are trying to do and a more intellectual world, a more intellectual structure, a more intellectual background. And I think this is really possible. I have the enormous pleasure of speaking to lots of wonderful people who don't work in universities, and many of them are very interested in how to connect what they're doing with things we're really good at universities, like running experiments or thinking about the ethics of what we're doing, or indeed kind of global issues. But I'd like universities to think more about how they are at the service of external organizations. I think there's a little bit too much arrogance within universities sometimes. This is a rather odd modern belief that universities kind of have to drive the intellectual agenda of society. And although I think there is definitely a place for that, that's become sort of too widespread. We need other universities thinking more about how they can cooperate with people outside universities in order to deliver things which they also value and also need. And there's a phrase one of my co-founders, Ed Fido, uses at LIS, that we'd like students to produce work of value to others. And the thinking here really is, since from school onwards, you do work which is for you and the people assessing you, and that's it really. And you try to hit those targets, do those things which will get you a good grade. And actually, when you leave education, the only thing that matters is that you produce work of value to other people, whether it's your clients, people who need your charitable work, your boss. And that's a very, very big shift for many graduates. So if you start early thinking, what is the value of this work? What is the purpose of this work? I think that's very helpful to make a connection between what you work on at university and what you'll be doing for the rest of your lives, most of you. So work of value to others, I think, is important, and it's another challenge to academics, again, to be provocative here. So the whole point of being an academic is that you write a PhD and you create a kind of world view, which is very powerfully evidenced, powerfully felt, and then you think you are the person that has the value, and people should kind of listen to you. And again, I respect that enormously, and of course we need a lot of that in order to have the best minds focusing on these problems in these ways, but we don't need infinite amount of this. We also need people thinking, what is the point of what I'm writing? What is the point of what I'm reading? How is it of service, to use that word again, to other people? So both of these, I think, lead to interdisciplinarity, which was my third theme, because once you leave university, you simply never think in terms of departments or even really disciplines ever again. The real world is simply too complex, and the problems are too complex, whether it's climate change, gender rights, plastic waste, migration, whatever it might be. They're all too complex to just be handled by one department. And of course, you see this within universities as well, to some extent now, where those kinds of issues are addressed. But out in the so-called real world, and I don't like that distinction actually, I've been deliberately provocative about what I think universities need to do, and I've been a bit tough on universities in this short video, but I don't like to really distinguish the real world from universities. It's all one world. But nevertheless, when you're not at a university, the complexity hits you very, very quickly, and you need to think, how am I going to connect these particular dots? How am I going to get these different people to work together? What different knowledge bases am I going to use? Is it anthropological? Is it psychological? Is it economic? What am I going to put together in order to tackle this problem? And that is inherently how interdisciplinarity works. It's what interdisciplinarity is. It's combining two or three different or more different knowledge bases, different methodologies, in order to get a result you couldn't get by just using one of those methodologies or just one of those knowledge bases. And this is a huge challenge to the curriculum, because curricula are defined in terms of disciplines, in terms of departments, and in this country, in the UK, I'm speaking, including Scotland, basically universities have been built on these lines for hundreds of years now. And it's also a genuinely conceptual and a genuinely kind of learning sciences challenge, because there's always a risk of interdisciplinarity being superficial, of skimming over the top, of not creating that real synthesis which has value. And so work needs to be done on the curriculum to ensure that the intellectual hard work is going in from students into their work, so that they are learning enough of the disciplines to do something really worthwhile, but they're also doing the hard work of synthesis. And this is really important to distinguish. Synthesis is hard. Creativity is hard. So being creative in your synthesizing also needs to be done well, and that's something that more can be done on in interdisciplinary curricula. But for various reasons, timetabling, tradition, research funding, the infrastructure of universities, academic pride and prestige, university curricula, particularly at undergraduate level, are extremely difficult to set up. So if we want to have this, because we think the world has become complex, because we want to be porous and work with real world organizations, and we want to be at the service of society, if we want, in other words, interdisciplinarity, we do have to do a good deal of work within the academy to work out how best to deliver those types of curricula. So I think that's all I want to say for now. Coming just under 10 minutes, so look forward to discussing this in more detail with you soon. Thank you.